This video is only part of an unpaid, unbiased, in-depth review from an average rider's perspective, so check out the rest in the link below at thegoodride.com. If you want real advice, fill out the Me Harmony profile in the link below so I can help you properly. And if this video helps, please consider donating or buying through our links. Thanks for watching. Welcome to The Good Ride, where we carefully carve and we're overly optimistic on our ollies. I'm James Beastie, this is Davey Boy, and we're looking at the YES Standard Uninc, new for 2023. We rode this in a wide variety of conditions. I primarily rode it with my Burton Kendos and my Union Atlas. We had good groomers, firm but fair groomers, a little bit of powder, a little bit more powder, and then a little bit more powder. It was an amazing April. And we have a little buddy comedy here, I guess. We've got the 62, Davey, the big boy, and the 56 for me. We both got out on these and had a time.
I was riding it with my Union Force bindings and Burton Ion boots, size 12.
To give you a short summary, this takes over where the Ghost departed. That's weird that a Ghost is gone. I thought they were always around. But the Standard Uninc has that modern camber profile, which just has a little bit of early rise, a good bit more camber than the Standard. It carves harder, it pops harder, it does just everything a little bit more aggressive. It's a little more technical, a little more locked in, but it seems to have a poppier core, the same or slightly faster bass than the Standard, and just appeals more to that more advanced to expert rider that still wants the versatility of an all mountain board and good float and powder because you can set it back with these setback inserts. You ride a little bit more normal stance width, 21.5 for me, and I forget what it is for Davey, but it's good throughout the stance range, setback or on reference. It's the same width, and I love that. And it's just got floating ability, carving ability. It's an excellent one-board quiver, especially for those of you who have a little bit bigger boot, like Davey. For me, it was kind of in between where I loved the basic Uninc a little bit more, but it was really close. And so let's talk sizing. I felt the 56 was good for me, but a little bit on the wide side, but I was getting used to it. But after getting off this and comparing it to the basic Uninc the same day, I loved just how easy it was to handle a 58 basic Uninc. So I like this, but it was a little bit much for me to manage, but I loved that extra width and powder. We'll get to that later, but overall, I think this was a great fit for my weight at about 190 and okay for my boot size, but not ideal.
I love the 62. I thought it was a really great fit. The width was perfect for my boot size. It turned really well. And I found that it floated and carried my weight really well in powder also. I didn't have any trouble floating. I didn't sink, and it just did everything I wanted.
When it comes to shape, this is what they call a directional volume twin. That sounds weird, but all it is basically a true twin on side cut between the feet. Then you have a different nose and tail shape. The nose has a little more surface area. It's a little longer and a little more floaty. At the very end of the tail here, you can see it kind of tapers in a little bit, even though it's the same width at the end of the side cut. And what that does is it gives you almost a true twin feel on groomers when you're on the reference stance. But when you set it all the way back and you're riding in powder, you get just a touch of a tapered directional feel and more float. And I just love this. It's such a versatile one-board quiver shape. Then you throw in the camber profile that has a good bit of camber between the feet, but there is still early rise. So it's almost mostly camber. It's kind of right on that border between being mostly camber and hybrid camber. It's significantly more camber than the Standard, which is basically just between the feet and then a lot of rocker. So if you're somebody who skids their turns, likes to butter, hit the park more, and wants a more mellow, forgiving board, you want the regular Standard. But if you're like Davey and I, and you like to turn, you like to carve hard, you want a little more pop, you want a little more ollie power, but you still don't want that full camber, unforgiving kind of feel, this Standard Uninc could work for you. And I don't know what it is, but I like it so much better than the Ghost. They're so similar in shape and camber profile, but something about this construction just makes me like this board more than I ever did with the Ghost.
With the shape, I thought when you have your stance centered, it rides very twinish, but when you set it back, it definitely has a very directional, floaty feel when you're getting deeper powder.
Yeah, very versatile board. There aren't many boards like this out there.
No, not really. It has a very unique feel to it.
And when it comes to flex, you can see there's a pretty medium stiff flex between the feet here. And then it kind of mellows out a little bit in the nose. It's a little softer, but not too much. It feels pretty consistent throughout. Mm-hmm. And the tail, and then let's do an overall flex here so you can kind of see. It's got this kind of like medium to medium stiff flex. But when you get it on snow, I found that it buttered easier than you would think for its flex here in the studio. It popped really well, and it has this really cool flex personality that's made for all conditions. It's not the best for hammering over uneven snow, but it handles hard, micro bumpy snow like a champ because it's got that rubbery feel to it, even though it's a little bit on the stiffer side for a YES board. It's a great all-day ride. The only thing I didn't like this for was like turning through bumps just because of the width. I loved my basic Uninc better, but overall I just feel like this has a really good flex personality. Just helped me be a better rider.
Yeah, I found when I had it all the way set back that the nose felt a little chattery for me.
When it comes to speed, I feel like there's good base glide. It's not the best. When I get on a Jones board after this, the base glide is always better, but when well waxed, it's pretty good. And I felt like it was damp, but it's not a bomber. But the side cut allows you to point it better than you would think for its depth. So overall, I think it's good, but it's not a board you get to bomb. And I think the Ghost was a little more balmy than this, but this just has a better overall feel underfoot that I like. When it comes to edge hold, I think this is just excellent. This mid-bite technology, this just slight indention at the waist, it does two things. It brings in the waist a little bit, makes it easier to turn for its width, still eliminates toe and heel drag over the foot if you size it correctly, but these indentions also grip really hard and make it really good in hard icy snow. If you ride out on the East Coast or if you ride in harder places, this is a great solution for you because even though it's a softer flex, that mid-bite technology grips in really well and holds.
Yeah, I found when I took it out on the Grimmers that I had, it was a little bit warmer, a little bit like almost slushy, and it was almost too grippy for me. Yeah, but in hard snow, ideal.
When it comes to turn initiation, I just talked a little bit about the mid-bite technology. It gives you faster turn initiation than you would think for the width. It was manageable for me with my size 9 boots and a 56. The 53 would probably be better. And it was slow to initiate a turn, but once you got on that turn, that side cut felt pretty turny. It's balanced, but more on the turny side, so it likes those quicker turns, it likes those more across the groomer turns, and circle carves a little bit more, but you can still make long, drawn-out S-turns and kind of more straight-liney turns, higher speed, down-the-line turns, and I think that's why I'm drawn to it. However, when I got on my basic Uninc, it was more my specs in a 58 because it was narrower. But for Davey,
I thought it turned great. I really enjoyed it. It was a really good across the groomer carver and also held some really nice tight turns as well. And it was just a beast in hard snow. I really thought it handled everything really well. He said everything I was thinking, so I was fighting for words.
Sorry. As far as powder goes, we got a lot of powder. I've had the YES Ghost in powder, I've had the Standard in powder, and I've had lots of iterations of this kind of all-mountain ride from YES, and this is just an excellent floater. On the same day, I took out my basic Uninc, set all the way back with the setback inserts, with the Standard Uninc and basic Uninc and the Standard, and the old Ghost, you can get 2.25 inches back on board. And what I loved about this is you could do it with a 21.5-inch stance width, which is the same as your reference. And with my YES Basic Uninc, it's more, I think, 22.5. I had to play some games with my Union Atlas, which luckily have lots of slide room for a full-size disc, so I could make it work set all the way back, but this one was just so easy, so I could put it here, set it all the way back, put it here, set it all the way back, and get amazing directional float, especially for something that's a twin on side cut. The personality just changes. Suddenly you go from kind of an aggressive all mountain freestyle board to a set back, almost free ride board feel, and it really floated well. The nose just poked up and the tail sank a little bit more than it should for a board like this, and it just floated so well. It was definitely better than my Basic Uninc here, and I think it's because of that wider width and that little extra bit of setback that I could get on this versus the wider stance on the Basic Uninc, and I loved it.
Yeah, I agree. I thought this board floated really well, and I loved it. And I really enjoyed how much different the personality felt when you set it all the way back and kind of got it into its power mode versus when I was riding it centered.
Yeah, it's almost two boards. That's why we call
really
this like all mountain and a one-board quiver. This is what it is, because it's not a true twin that has a centered stance that has a stiffer flex. That's a mountain freestyle board. This is truly versatile for somebody who can only bring one board on a trip. You're going to be happy in almost everything you're in if you spec it right. And when it comes to like switch and park, well, don't talk to me about park. That's just not what I'm doing these days on the dark side of my 40s. But if I was on a 153, this would be a great pipe board for me. My Basic Uninc at a 58 is much better than this at a 56. When it comes to jibbing, not something I want to do with this. The Standard would be much better. This, though, I felt is a great jump board, and it tracks really well into jumps, especially for something with like a semi-deep side cut, and had a good landing to it as well. Lots of pop. It's a good board for sending it around the mountain, and what little small jumps I did, I loved.
Yeah, even with it set back, I thought it still felt really centered and tracked in really well. And then when I had the stance centered, it felt even better off the jumps.
And I think this would be a great pipe board for you because you're the right boot size for the width. So overall, I really like this board. I think it's almost right there with my Basic Uninc in a lot of ways. And while the Basic Uninc is limited in sizing because there's a 58, a 56 wide, and a 52, as far as I remember. There might be another size in there, but it's limited. Where the Standard Uninc is going to fill in as a better board for those with bigger feet. And I think it's going to kind of balance out the Basic Uninc, and they're both very recommendable boards, especially if you want a versatile all-mountain board that's good in powder and great for carving groomers and loves to launch off kickers. This is going to be your board.